Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmersday, October 6th, 2024. On the show today, robots in Fort Wilderness, and which DVC resorts have the highest occupancy. Then in our main segment, Jim continues the history of Mickey's PhilharMagic. Let's get started by bringing in the man who wonders why nobody talks about human spontaneous combustion anymore. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
Len, if it's all the same to you, I'd prefer today to talk about the dangers of non-spontaneous human combustion.
Intentional human combustion?
Well, look, I'm just saying, you spend the morning out on the driveway, on your back, under your vintage Ford Pinto, fixing a leaky fuel line, all right? And the wife calls you in for lunch. You go to wash up, and she's like, never mind, have a seat in this rattan chair, all right? And then
Exactly.
And then you go, what's on the menu today? And your bride responds as she hands you a hot toddy. It's like, why? Oh, we're going to have flaming shish kebabs and then cherries Jubilee for dessert.
Cherries Jubilee.
And, as she goes to light the candles on the romantic centerpiece, she just offhandedly mentions, oh, you did sign that life insurance policy I left on your workbench, right?
Speaking of your romantic partner doing intentional stuff,
Yeah.
I happened to watch this week Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, the werewolf, and Dracula.
Yeah.
And the premise there is that Bud Abbott has a girlfriend who is way out of his league, and she wants him for his brains, literally, for Frankenstein.
Yep. Actually, the weird thing of it is I highly recommend that film. It is the weird thing of it is the monsters play it straight. I mean, they are
Straight, the whole thing. Yeah, they're there. Yeah.
On the other hand, Abbott and Costello are literally at the top of their form. In fact, they had been in kind of a slump post World War II, and this actually gave them another 10 years at Universal. This movie made so much money, it then launched the whole series of Abbott and Costello meet The Invisible Man, The Mummy, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They did a number of movies after that where, okay, horror and comedy equals box office.
I love that you know that, because in the Amazon trivia, and I was watching this on Amazon Prime, it said it was the second cheapest movie that Universal made that year, and it was the second highest grossing.
No, that's it exactly.
Film that they made last year. And Bud was originally reluctant to do it, but then they gave him an advance of $50,000, and he was like, "All right, I'll do it."
Yeah, no.
Which $50,000 back in 1948?
No.
Yeah,
that's it exactly. Yeah. That's it. But no, highly recommended, especially for the month of October. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, it was a hoot. So, okay. All right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Chad Ryan, Patrick O'Day, Ecto1, Thomas Miller, Denise Phillips, and Abe Sussman. Jim, these are the merchandise folks bravely trying to figure out how to market alpaca fleece to Central Florida guests when Tropical Americas opens at Disney's Animal Kingdom later on in 2027. They say the easy part is advertising the wool's softness and water resistance, which sells itself. But they're still workshopping how to say it's also flame resistant, mostly because it gives management ideas. True story.
I sense a theme, Len. I sense a theme. Okay.
I was going to harken back to the infamous Monsanto glow-in-the-dark asbestos underwear that they sold at Disneyland in the 60s, but litigation is still pending. So
There we go.
All right, one more quick shout out to a subscriber. Thanksgiving is coming up, Jim, as you know, and one of my favorite new Thanksgiving traditions is to read the Washington Post's Thanksgiving Q&A column by Becky Crystal and Aaron Hutcherson. And I'm not there for the practical questions like the safest way to defrost a frozen turkey. No, Jim. I am there for the off-the-wall questions like, how do I cook a 22-pound bird on a 9-hour bus ride where it'll be stuck in the engine compartment so that it comes out juicy and brown? It's a Greyhound Model DL3 with a Series 50 454 horsepower engine, if that helps. Which is, I exaggerate only slightly the kind of questions that they get, right? So,
wow. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So I love it so much. And your other co-host, Drew Taylor, is in New York. We're actually going to dinner tonight.
Oh, cool.
And Drew and I are doing Thanksgiving together, which sort of reminded me of all of this.
Okay.
Anyway, so I wrote a note to Becky this week saying how much I love the column, and it turns out Becky listens to the show.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I suspect it's so she becomes immune to people like us saying dumb things all the time, which kind of helps with the column.
Okay.
But really, you guys should all check out Vicky's Thanksgiving advice, preferably while enjoying mimosas during the holidays. That's my other subscriber shout out.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice.
All right, on to the news. The news is sponsored by Touring Plans. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at touringplans.com. All right, Jim, the Everything Pop food court at Pop Century had its refurbishment extended through the end of November, which means this thing is going to run 4 full months from the end of July till the end of November. That's kind of surprising for a food court refurbishment, right?
Yeah, but kind of intriguing if you look across the way. Now remember, Art of Animation once upon a time was supposed to be the second half of Pop Century. And
right.
As I understand it, that the lag time between finishing the first half and the second half and the different orientation of the Art of Animation food court and how much better business it does, that seems to be the plan this time around. And when you're making that big a change to the actual physical plant of a food court, it can get look who I'm talking to. How many house remodels have you dealt with where they talk to you? Well, we could finish in calendar 2014, but
exactly. Okay. You wouldn't want to live here, but we could do it.
No, we could do
exactly.
It. Yeah. So.
All right, fair. All right, so nothing there. So if they take the extra time and they do it right, that's fine.
Okay.
In the meantime, there's still mobile ordering, so the kitchen is still running. There's the existing temporary grab and go station, which will continue to run. I did hear that sit down tables on the inside might be limited as they go through that too, but it should be fine. Also, Jim, it looks like the new Hollywood Studios villain show that's replacing Lightning McQueen will open around summer 2025, according to construction permits found by our friends over at wdwmagic.com. Jim, let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we've said that we know we're getting a Villain's Land for the Magic Kingdom.
Yep.
But how much of the actual thing going into Villain's Land is still up in the air? Because Disney hasn't really told us anything about the attractions, the restaurants, the shows, or the entertainment going in there. Is this still a placeholder that the Hollywood Studio show might help flesh out?
From what I've been told, the only absolute locked in thing so far is the Maleficent Thorn Forest coaster.
Okay.
And again, anybody who's seen the one piece of concept art that Disney has put out there, it's like, okay, that we know. Everything else at this point is pretty much up for grabs. So you're probably not wrong about the notion of let's use this as sort of a dry run to see what sort of character interaction guests might want in this land. I guess for me, what's intriguing about this is remembering the club villain upcharge thing that was in this same space, and
right.
The notion that now we're going to revisit the idea of guests interacting with villains, but it's everybody coming through the door gets it. So I'm going to be fascinated to check this out come the summer of 2025.
All right, cool. All right, Jim, I was at a party earlier this week. I can't say where or with whom, but I did get to talk to one of the guests there, and they alluded to the following. So one of Fort Wilderness's strengths, Jim, is that it's quiet and remote, but it's also a weakness, right? It's so big as a resort that it has its own internal bus transportation system. And that means things that you take for granted at another resort, like bopping down to the lobby for a snack, are harder at Fort Wilderness, right? But what, James, what if you could order food through the MDE app and have it delivered by an autonomous vehicle? Word around the campfire is that Imagineers have looked at this specific possibility. And not for nothing, Jim, but the 2024 Disney Accelerator class, kind of Disney's venture capital wing, included the self-driving company Nuro.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think they're interested in doing self-driving cars, mainly because liability, right? But what about it? What if it could deliver things like food, park purchases, stuff like that?
Oh, Len, this suddenly gets very interesting when you think about the permits we've suddenly seen go live again for the DVC and the site of the old Reflections Lodge.
Right.
What if from day one you designed your kitchen setup?
Kitchen, exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the kitchen, and it's sitting right in between. I mean, technically, you could deliver to the cabins over at
There you go.
Wilderness Lodge as well.
Yeah. Now, mind you that there is an infrastructure issue. The whole notion of you would have to, I mean, these vehicles would have to be hardy enough to travel on the various terrains you find at Fort Wilderness, or for that matter, you might have to go through before you launch the system and do an upgrade of walkways or that sort of thing. But oh, wow. All I ask, Glenn, is they make them like little Conestoga wagons. All right.
Oh my God, yes, 100%. Also, speaking of DVC, shout out to our friends over at the DVC Resorts Forum on Disboards for pointing out this interesting DVC occupancy rate chart that Disney had to file with the state of California recently. So, Jim, I included the chart in the show notes, and I ended up having to use optical character recognition to type in all these numbers. But basically what it says is it gives the member occupancy rate, the cash or renter occupancy rate, and then the combined occupancy rate for a bunch of DVC resorts through March of this year. And Jim, I want to highlight a couple of things. One, the occupancy rate of the villas at the Grand Californian is 98.75%.
Wow.
Yeah. Members take up 98.65% of that. Bay Lake Tower, 96.5%. So just for context, folks, the average occupancy rate for U.S. hotels in 2024 is projected to be around 63%. So this is half again better than that number, which is amazing. And Jim, I mean, frankly, it tells us why Disney's continuing to build DVC.
Oh, no,
right?
No doubt. But dear Lord, those are crazy numbers.
Even Hilton, I mean, Hilton, the Hilton Head Resort was at just under 85%. And that includes a long time where they were going through refurbishments. Like you can tell, like December, January, February, March, they were going through hefty refurbishments, which drove down the member occupancy rates. But it's still at 85%, a number that almost any hotel chain would kill for. So here's the one thing that I did note: the Boardwalk Villas.
Yep.
73.71%. So what's going on that people don't like the Boardwalk Villas? It's not the creepy clown pool, because that's gone. And yeah, why not Boardwalk Villas?
And I forgive me for, I mean, the fact that if you think of Epcot as now Festival Central, food, wine, flower, garden, the holiday celebration, festival of the arts, wouldn't it stand to reason that you are a short walk to the International Gateway? Wouldn't that?
Yeah.
Just on the back of that alone, shouldn't that be driving up attendance at that resort?
It could be the refurbishment that they did too, because I think the numbers fell off pretty quickly in the fall of last year. But I didn't think that the refurbishment lasted that long. I'll go back and check on that, because that could be what it was.
Okay.
Could be the big refurbishment there. Yeah,
okay, got it. All right. But, wow, no, these are fascinating numbers.
Oh, yeah. All right, on to surveys. Jim, our friend Craig Radow, got a Disney Cruise Line survey that asked about ports of call you'd like to visit. And Craig says all of them were your typical destinations in the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and so on, except for one, Jim. And that one was Astoria, Oregon. And Jim, I only know two things about Astoria, Oregon, and they both come from Craig. One, Disney Cruise Line does not currently sail to Astoria, Oregon. Number two, not only is it one of the towns where the movie The Goonies was filmed, the film says it takes place in Astoria. So I did some spot checking, and it looks like Princess, Celebrity, and Royal Caribbean all stop in Astoria as part of some West Coast cruise itinerary, so I'm guessing that's what it is. But Jim, I have to imagine that because of the Goonies, that one of the port adventures Disney would have would be to One-Eyed Willie's Lagoon, right?
I was about to say!
I knew you were!
We have to seek out the Inferno. That's the name of Willie's ship. And
the ship, yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
All right, on to listener questions. And Jim, this one's for you. It's from Ben, who says, why were the Diagon Alley plans for Universal Studios Hollywood delayed or canceled? Back in 2016, the LA Times reported that they saw blueprints for Diagon Alley to replace Waterworld, and then it changed to replacing Falls Lake. So I included a link to the LA Times article in question, and it's by our friend Bernie McDonald. But Jim, why no Diagon Alley in Universal Studios Hollywood?
It's so interesting you bring this up, Len, because on September 18th of this month, Universal cut the ribbon on their new One Universal office block. It's down on the lower lot. One of the things that's important to understand about Hollywood is, much like Disneyland, they're landlocked. They only, in fact, it's Mr. Schul that always points out that Disneyland is like a Swiss watch. Anytime you put something else in, you first have to take something else out.
Right.
Look, the folks at Universal know the moment they open Diagon Alley in Hollywood, they're printing money. But the problem is, you put that much steel and that much concrete in place, it's there forever.
Right.
So it's like the notion of, when we do this, and we will do this, we have to make the right decision. And, for example, there was evidently some serious discussion of taking the grand finale of the tram tour, the Fast and Furious thing they added a few years ago. In fact, Len, that survey that you got about the Minions and Back to the Future and that sort of thing was supposedly part of a conversation about, do we, instead of tearing this down, do we put a new theme into this space for the grand finale? But yeah, so right now they've just opened this. I want to say it's a 350,000 square foot office building next to a 75,000 square foot commons building, along with 10,000 worth of green space. And so all sorts of people are moving into that structure, which then opens up other chunks of real estate. And what I've basically been told is that after Fast and Furious, the coaster that they're basically building into the hillside there, when that comes online in 2026, we're then going to see some very interesting dominoes start to fall. So Diagon Alley is coming to Hollywood eventually. It's just that the folks, well, again, this is the thing coming out of Comcast. Comcast loves the theme park business, and they've effectively told the people out in Hollywood, you have $1 billion to play with.
Yeah.
And more to the point, you have 10 years to do it. So they're moving stuff around the board. So hang in there. Again, I know people want to have Diagon Alley out on the West Coast, and it'll get there eventually, but they also want to include the train experience from Florida that's so popular, and that's a whole issue in and of itself.
Okay. This reminds me, Jim, of me having to find my Christmas tree in my garage every year. Like, first you've got to back the car out of the garage. Then you've got to remove all of the stuff that is accumulated in front of the Christmas tree.
There you go.
In the last year. Then you got to pull out the Christmas tree. Right. So this is basically what they're doing.
There we go. It's Len's garage writ large at Universal City out in Hollywood. So there you go. So.
All right. We also got an email from Lee Carter who says this. I'm hoping you can use your data and insights to shed light on a recent Epcot experience. My family and I visited the park on Saturday, September 14th. We attempted to rope drop Frozen, only to get there and find out it was down. We waited a while and got in line as it went back up, only then to be asked to exit the queue after 20 minutes because it was down again, and it remained down for a good portion of the morning. Okay. At one point that morning, I believe in addition to Frozen, The Seas with Nemo, Spaceship Earth, and even Figment were down. This resulted in ridiculous wait times for nearly everything else. Guardians was also down for a portion of the day, but this is less surprising to me. By 1 p.m., all we had done was watch the new Encanto show, attend the American Adventure, and eat a ham sandwich in France. I'm okay with a ham sandwich. All right.
Okay.
It only seemed to get worse as the day went on. We ended the day with the Three Caballeros in Mexico, also a 20-minute wait, only to have the ride shut down while on it. Is it common for this many rides to be down in a single day in Epcot? Or is this just the new normal with not enough high-capacity rides? Okay. So Lee experienced 6 ride outages in one day in Epcot, and keep in mind there's only 12 rides in the whole park.
Okay.
So at least half of Epcot's rides were down on the day of Lee's visit. Fair enough. I went back and looked at historical ride downtime for Epcot, and it looks like that on an average day, 5 of those 6 rides experience some downtime every day. The mean and the mode are both 5. So Lee had a slightly worse than average experience, but definitely something within the realm of typical, right? And while I had the spreadsheets open, I looked at all 12 rides, not just the 6 that Lee mentioned. And Jim, the mean and the mode for ride failures per day are 6 at Epcot. And about one day a month, on average, 3/4 of the 12 rides will be offline at some point. The good news, Jim, is that I could not find a day where all 12 rides were offline at the same time. There were at least 0 of those. And there was one day in the past year-ish when no rides experienced problems. That was September 29th, 2023, so a little over a year ago. But yeah, on a little more than 50% of the days each year, like 53%, you'll experience outage at half or more of Epcot's attractions in a single day. So yeah, that's typical. Yeah.
Oof, okay. Well, suddenly the reason that you get alcohol everywhere in Epcot becomes very, very apparent.
Exactly.
Wow.
All right. And then our friend Lisa Thiel, in response to our survey question that we read a couple of weeks ago, asking if you go to Central Florida during July to escape the heat. And I was like, who does that? Apparently, there's at least one person. So Lisa writes in and says, we usually go to Walt Disney World in the summer because of kids' schedules, including a month in the June-July timeframe this summer. It was glorious. You know how most days it rains about 6 p.m. and then the outflow from the storms comes in and drops the temperature for a few hours? It doesn't do that in North Texas, where we're from. It's just a solid hot with no rain for most of the summer. First thing in the morning, it's in the low 80s and the wind is hot. So we spend the summers under a heat cap of a high-pressure system. We were so excited in Orlando. We kept saying, who knew? It was such a relief. It was even better after July 4th. Yeah, it was a little wet, but it was in the 80s. We compared the weather to home. For the month we were there, it was always cooler in Florida by at least a few degrees. I admit it, some days it rained and the humidity was increased. Somehow, there were several wet and miserable days, but the gamble of having an evening in the park in the low 80s was worth it. All right. So, okay. Jim, I read that email to you. And the first time I read Lisa's email, I looked to see if there was some sort of secret message encoded in it telling us the location where she was being held hostage. Because I got to the part where she said it was a relief to go to Central Florida in July. I'm like, something. This is a cry for help. But apparently it's true. Okay. So North Texas, Jim. North Texas.
Wow. And no accompanying TikTok video where she's blinking in code, right?
Blinking twice. Exactly.
All right. Interesting. Okay. So.
All right. So we know now. North Texas, right? That's where that's the people who go. Fair enough. All right. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim continues the history of Mickey's PhilharMagic. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right, Jim, last week we were talking about Magic Journeys, the old Epcot film that had made its way over to the Magic Kingdom and that was prefaced by a Donald Duck cartoon in 3D that was really well received, right?
It was. And again, this ran in the Fantasyland Theater. It was what they considered a stopgap make good. Ran for almost 6 years in that park from mid-December of 87 through December of 1993. Now, but around this same time, Disney is begun to promote The Lion King, which won't open in theaters till June of 1994. But they were doing something different this time around, Len. Instead of putting a traditional trailer, something made up of clips of different scenes throughout the entire movie, what the studio's marketing department decided to do was run unedited the first 4 minutes of The Lion King. This was first entered into theaters in front of Disney's live-action version of The Three Musketeers, and it was the whole circle of life scenes, where the presentation of baby Simba to all of the creatures who live in the Pride Lands. And audiences kind of lost their mind when they saw this footage. They were like, wow, the Lion King.
Gotta see this.
No, that's it exactly. Which did not go unnoticed by then Disney CEO Michael Eisner. Sensing that the Disney Studios had another hit animated film on its hands, orders came down from on high that the company's theme parks needed to be ready. And Len, this is 6 months out from this film arriving at theaters to capitalize on this success because...
And that's rare for Disney to get ahead of a film like that.
Well, I mean, remember, Disney is the home of synergy, but this is mid 90s. And to be honest, Michael Eisner isn't entirely happy with the way the folks at the parks, the way they've been handling the films, the hit films that the studios put out. I mean, case in point, Disney's Aladdin arrives in theaters November of 1992. And Disneyland Park doesn't manage to get their version of Aladdin's Royal Caravan Parade up and running till April of 93. And that's nearly 6 months after this animated blockbuster first debuts in theaters, and it then becomes the first film to sell $200 million worth of tickets, first animated film in that territory alone. Worse yet, Len, is the lag between the November 1989 release of Disney Little Mermaid and the January 1992 opening of The Voyage of the Little Mermaid show at Disney MGM. Len, that's 2 years and 3 months after that success. And it takes the parks that long to get a Little Mermaid show up out of the ground. And Eisner's determined this isn't going to happen with Lion King. He wants the stateside Disney parks to strike while the iron is hard, capitalize on what appears to be a can't-miss hit film, and with the idea of making this animated feature a driver of attendance for the summer of 94. So stateside parks want to make the boss happy. They scramble into overdrive. And entertainment team at Disneyland's like, all right, how do we get the Lion King into the park in just 6 months' time? And they're like, all right, we'll just do another parade. We'll do something like Aladdin's Royal Caravan. Whereas the entertainment team at Walt Disney World, they opted to go a different way. They saw how popular the Voyage of the Little Mermaid show had been with visitors at MGM and said, could we do another puppet-based show?
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, so they reach out to Fran Soder, who had developed the Voyage of the Little Mermaid show for the studios, and then Fran in turn reaches out to Chuck Fawcett, who ran Animax Design in Nashville, Tennessee, which was the company that built all of the puppets for Disney MGM's Voyage of the Little Mermaid show, including that 12-foot tall, 10-foot wide Ursula puppet that did Poor Unfortunate Souls.
Right.
All right, anyway. Chuck's first question when Animax gets the Lion King assignment is, how big do you want to go with these puppets? I mean, where is this show going to be staged? How much show space are we going to need to fill?
and Disney's like, these are all excellent questions. We'll get back to you.
There we go. This is the thing. Eisner has said, I want this thing to open day and date, which means they want the show in the park on July 24th, 1994, the same day.
I'm feeling circus tent. Okay.
There we go. All right, but here's the thing. Even if, like a circus tent, like a Butler building, one of those prefab things that you can order and then set up on site, I mean, it still would take months to get this structure built, not to mention loading in all of the stage lighting and the sound equipment, the seats, curtains, all that.
Would it be opening just in time for hurricane season?
There we go. There we go. All right.
So, lots of issues going on here. All right.
All right. So Walt Disney World Entertainment Team is like, look, we have to make do with what we've got. And what we've got is the Fantasyland Theater that, again, 6 months into the run of the 3D double bill, Magic Journeys, and again, the Donald Duck short, Working for Peanuts, playing every half hour to a handful of guests who, let's be honest here, Len, are looking for a dark, air-conditioned place to sit down and get out of the sun for a while. So, all right, that 3D movie gets its plug pulled in December of 1993. And when Soder and Fawcett finally get inside the Fantasyland Theater and see how big a space it is, Lynn, I mean, and there's seats for 496 people in there.
And it's wide. It's not just deep. It's wide.
Well, that's it exactly. They actually go to the extremes of the back row in the theater and stand there and look at their sightlines, and they realize in order for this to play, and already the show has a name, it's called The Legend of the Lion King, they've got to go big with the puppets for it to work. So case in point, like the young adult Simba puppet that would appear on stage in the Hakuna Matata number alongside puppet versions of Timon and Pumbaa, to guarantee that, again, guests seated in those most extreme positions in the back row, this puppet was going to need to be 6 feet tall and 7 feet long. More to the point, it was going to take 5 animateers to properly perform this one character in that specific number of the stage show. And by the way, Len,
did you just make up the word animateer?
I have the press release that was issued in July of 1994 for the opening of the show. All right. And the PR team, look, they wanted this to seem special. So they weren't puppeteers that worked the show. They were animateers. And by the way, those Lion King characters that you saw in the show, Len, not puppets, humanimals. So
humanimals. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a weird genetic experiment going wrong.
I'm sorry. Sure. That's if somebody didn't make a set of young adult novels in the early 1990s called Humanimals, an opportunity was missed, Len. Okay,
you know that Jeff Goldblum has a cameo in that. You just know it.
There we go. All right. So again, nice try on the part of Disney's PR team to try to make The Legend of the Lion King seem more magical and impressive, but neither of these names, animateer or humanimal, stuck. Kind of like the Hand Witch, Lynn, but we'll talk. There we go.
We could do an entire show on just words that Disney tried and didn't get to stick.
This is true.
All right,
true.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Legend of the Lion King.
So now, all right. So again, Legend of the Lion King needs big puppets, big sets. I mean, for example, the Pride Rock in that show, in order, again, to play to the back row, had to be 18 feet tall. So it's going to need a large cast of puppeteers, 10 people working behind the scenes at every show to properly present the 17-minute long version of the stage version of this animated feature. And since, Len, there are going to be days when the Magic Kingdom, because the park will open to guests at 7 a.m. and then stay open till 1 a.m., where they're going to need to present the Legend of the Lion King show 30 times during one operational day.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking about Nemo here.
No.
We're talking...
No. So
I continue... Oh, I didn't even think of this. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so they actually needed multiple cast of puppeteers. In fact, they had to hire 8 in total to keep the show up and running. And by the way, Len, highly recommend, if you head over to YouTube, there is this great behind-the-scenes video of Legend of the Lion King that was taken down in the trench where the puppeteers are working while the stage show is actually going on. And if you want to see something amazing, get a hint of the physical stamina it took to pull off the show. Go check out that video.
Jim, I'm picturing this in my head, and it's the smell of sweat and then PTSD and felt.
Kind of nailed it in one there, Len.
Okay, all right. Okay.
I don't think anybody's buying that commemorative candle, but all right, anyway.
You're right. The worst Disney-scented candle ever.
There you go. Okay, now it would be nice to report that the folks down at Walt Disney World did what their boss asked, that they got it to open day and date. And again, remember, the Lion King, the original hand-drawn animated version of this thing, opens June 24th, 1994. But again, getting 8 different casts of puppeteers hired and properly trained, just to make sure that all of the puppet rigs that Animax has built are actually sturdy enough to stand up to the demand of that many performances a day. They missed their projected opening date by just 2 weeks, though. So it's up and running by July 8th of 1994. But that said, the PR team at Walt Disney World, they do a great job. They fly in Robert Guillaume, the voice of Rafiki. They fly in Ernie Sarbella, voice of Pumbaa, who for the official grand opening of the Fantasyland Theater and its new show there, they don't do the usual thing, cutting a ribbon. They chop a vine. All right.
Nice.
Okay. Now, mind you, just in case you're wondering, entertainment team out at Disneyland Park in California, did they get their Lion King cross-promotional thing up on time? And it's like, well, no. Remember, they were supposed to do a parade, the Lion King celebration, rather than the show, but they too couldn't get it open day and date, again, with the theatrical release of the hand-drawn Lion King. Didn't miss by much, only a week. Lion King Celebration began rolling down Main Street, USA on July 1st of that same year, 1994, and included a number of firsts. In a Disney parade, they had the very first audio animatronic figure on a float.
Really? That was the first one?
Yep, the Zazu puppet. It was also the very first parade at a Disney park to do a show stop, as in...
Really?
Yep. Cast of 89, 56 dancers, 12 puppeteers, dancers. And I love how Disney designates this 10 acrobatic pole dancers as opposed to just 10 pole dancers.
Just the regular pole dancers who don't do anything acrobatic.
There
Okay.
we go.
All right.
There we go. But 6 musicians and 5 remote control operators. They stopped at 3 different points along the parade route and then did a full-blown performance of the Circle of Life. And
wow.
All right, by the way, Len, I mentioned those 5 remote control operators that were part of the celebration parade. These folks operated a full-size crocodile puppet, which rolled down the street just ahead of the Just Can't Wait to Be King unit. And then there were 4 bugs that zoomed around out ahead of the Pumbaa puppetronic. He was a half puppet, half animatronic figure that sat at the front of the Hakuna Matata float. And thanks to my pal, Arlen Miller, in the spring of 1994, I actually got to go to the workshop in Orlando, where all of these remote control crocodile and then the bugs, which, Len, you'll love this. What they did is they actually went into like Toys R Us, bought RC racers off the shelf.
Sure.
All right. Stripped the car body off of it and then created the carapace of a giant insect. And so along the parade route, these people are basically operating bug bodies on top of RC racers. And Pumbaa's like, oh, I want to eat that one and I want to eat that one. So.
All right. I mean, yeah, off the shelf sometimes works. Go ahead.
Okay. But anyway, these folks were nice enough to let me test drive one of the remote control bugs before they packed it.
Jim.
Yeah, straight into the side of a workbench. I have no hand-eye coordination, and they then had to spend the better part of the afternoon repairing the bug, but
you know what? That's fine.
Okay. Well, I, by the way, talked about the puppetronics that were built for the Disneyland Lion King Celebration Parade. Again, we mentioned the Pumbaa puppet. There was also a full-size elephant and a giraffe. And these, as compared to those bugs, ridiculously sturdy. So sturdy that when the Lion King Celebration Parade ended its run at Disneyland Park in June of 97, these parade floats, along with their puppetronic elements, were packed up and sent down to Florida, where after Central Shop spent a few months retooling these floats, these units from the Disneyland Lion King Celebration Parade then became key elements of the Festival of the Lion King show.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Jim and Jungle Parade, but it actually made it into the show, the Festival of the Lion King show.
In fact, what's fascinating about this is, so when you watch that show today, and how many different iterations of that theater have there been now?
I was trying to go through all the names while you're talking. And during COVID wasn't one of the show titles Celebration of Festival of the Lion King? Like they combined all the words.
There we go.
Was that just a fever dream? Did I just imagine that?
And I'm sure the word tail was in there somewhere as well.
Exactly.
Okay, so again, the puppetronic of Pumbaa that you can see today in Animal Kingdom's Festival of the Lion King show, Len, that's 30 years old.
Wow.
Likewise, the elephant and the giraffe in that same stage show. So that is impressive workmanship to have lasted this long. On the other hand, the Humanimals that Animax created for Legend of the Lion King show, again, sturdy enough. They stood up to that 30 shows a day schedule for the full 7.5-year run. But that show shuts down February of 2002. And Len, what was interesting, for a time, if you did the walking tour at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and remember when the the special effects warehouse got renamed to be a celebration of the Jim Henson Creature Shop.
Right.
That
was a long time ago. Yeah,
it was. But during that time, you can actually see the puppets, or some of the puppets that Animax had created for this show. Anyway, that walking tour stopped being offered in September of 2014, so that then site prep could then begin on the third track for Florida's version of Toy Story Mania, which would know until May of 2016. All right, just ducking back quick. So again, we just talked about that February 2002 closure of the Legend of the Lion King show, which then cleared the way for Mickey's PhilharMagic, and we will get to the development of that 3D movie. And why it's sometimes a mistake to use the scent of jasmine inside of an attraction on the third and final installment of this series on next week's Disney Dish.
So this was fantastic, Jim. I learned so much here. So Festival of the Lion King ran from what, 95, 94?
It started, I want to say July 8th, 1994, and then again ran till February of 2002.
So a little over 7.5 years.
Yeah. Actually, weird little bend on the story, which we'll discuss next week. One of the big numbers in that show, of course, was I Just Can't Wait to Be King. And irony enough, when you go to...
it's in PhilharMagic.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, I think eventually when PhilharMagic gets replaced, it's like, it's a Sleepy Hollow ride that somehow goes through I Just Can't Wait to Be King. I have no idea why.
We just need 10 seconds of that audio somewhere in the next ride, right?
There we go. All
right, Jim, you mentioned the Little Mermaid puppets, and obviously Legend of the Lion King had puppets. The most complex puppet show Disney's ever done are the Nemo shows over at Animal Kingdom. Which of those two shows, Legend of the Lion King or Mermaid, do you think is more of the direct ancestor to those shows?
All right. I would argue, because what's kind of interesting is the puppets that were done for and we're talking about the original iteration of Finding Nemo the musical were actually done by the very same team that did the puppets for the Lion King Broadway show for Julie Taymor.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So again, the notion was that, in fact, I apologize, I'm blanking the name of the very talented gentleman who also did, for example, the giant walking figure puppets for the Reflections of Earth parade around Epcot. He became, on the heels of the success of the Lion King Broadway, he became Disney's sort of in the park puppet guy.
Oh, see if you can find it for next week's show.
Okay, I'll do that.
Fantastic. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. Jim, also, I would be remiss if I didn't say congratulations on this, our 500th episode. Congratulations.
Every so often, if you don't stop them early, folks, they keep going. All right?
Exactly. Well, we're like kudzu at this point.
There we go. That's right.
You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our most recent show was on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Walt Disney World. And on next week's show, we're going to finish up the history of Mickey's PhilharMagic. You can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, still apologizing for last year's autocorrect accident that almost had them roasting chipmunks on an open fire at the 16th Annual West Virginia Chestnut Festival, honoring the Great American Chestnut Tree on Sunday, October 13th, 2024, at the Rollsburg Community Park in beautiful downtown Rollsburg, West Virginia. While Eric and David are doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.
All of the characters and many of the scenes from the Disney animated film The Lion King are brought to life in this 25-minute stage production. Guests experience special environmental effects, including misty rain, cold nights, the warm winds of the Serengeti Plain, and stampeding wildebeest. Songs in the show include Circle of Life, Hakuna Matata, Can You Feel the Love Tonight, and I Can't Wait to Be King.